At the age of 60, I was confined to my sickbed. The surgery required a family member's signature. And that's how I finally got to see my husband, with whom I had been separated for many years. Old man, please agree to continue the treatment. I still want to be with our children. However, Hector looked impatient. You're a troublemaker. I really don't see the point of you staying alive. If it weren't for you blackmailing me with our marriage contract back then, I could have been with Jocelyn. Now she's divorced and returned to the country for me. We'll be together again soon. Don't hold me back any longer. I watched helplessly as my husband signed the agreement to give up the treatment and personally removed my oxygen mask. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the 1990s. Looking at Hector, who was pulling and tugging with Jocelyn in front of our house. I firmly said, I want to call off the engagement. In this life, let whoever wants to be his virtuous wife do it. I'm going to take advantage of the spring breeze of reform and become the first generation of female bosses. When I opened my eyes again, I stared blankly at the Chinese zodiac cow and her hanging on the wall. It was March 1997. There was still a week left before I married Hector. I was so shocked that I rushed from the bed to the mirror. I stared in a daze at my youthful face. And my hands had delicate skin that hadn't been ruined by housework. I trembled and raised my hand to cover my chest, almost in tears with excitement. I haven't stepped into the cage of marriage yet. There's still time for everything. Before I could fully come to my senses, there was a commotion outside the courtyard. It was Hector. He was holding Jocelyn with excitement and confessing his feelings. Jocelyn, in this lifetime, I will never let go of your hand again. After losing you, I realized how regretful I was. Spending a lifetime with someone I don't love is too painful. I don't want to wait until she's 60 to die. In this lifetime. No, I want us to be together right now. Come on. Let's go and call off the engagement now. Hector's words made my heart tremble. I almost uncontrollably looked at the still young face outside the door. His words revealed a fact: Hector had also been reborn. In my previous life, Hector heartlessly removed my oxygen mask, but still pretended to be deeply in love in front of everyone. The doctors and nurses who rushed over comforted him one after another. Hector, you and your wife have supported each other for so many years. We know you made this decision out of necessity and couldn't bear to see her suffer anymore. Please accept our condolences and try to move on. Yes, having fulfilled la session. We all know that you, Professor, are deeply in love. Life is long, and you should look ahead. But only I knew that Hector was just crying out of excessive excitement. He pretended to be unable to accept it, staggered away with flowers, and tried his best to maintain his image as a good husband and a respected professor in front of everyone. In fact, he couldn't wait to go to the airport to pick up the woman he had loved all his life. The flower petals fell to the ground, and were crushed by the soles of Hector's shoes, oozing juice and staining the ground in a mess. Just like my absurd life. I closed my eyes and completely lost consciousness. And the medical equipment let out a continuous beeping sound. Drip. Thinking of this, I clenched my fists tightly. When my parents saw me standing at the door in a daze, they thought I was sad. They glared at Hector and cursed. Your Hector family is really ungrateful. Over the years, for the sake of our children's marriage, our Chloe family has provided money and manpower to your family. When your mother was seriously ill, it was me and Chloe who pulled a cart and sent her to the hospital in the heavy snow. Now, you're saying you don't like Chloe anymore? Hector and I had a betrothal arranged by our grandparents. Hector's family was in a poor financial situation, and they basically lived by borrowing money. And my parents, out of consideration for this marriage contract, were willing to help his family from time to time. Jocelyn beside him looked at Hector pitifully and said a grieved lie. Brother Hector, please don't have a falling out with sister Chloe because of me. What Father Chloe said is right. You must marry sister Chloe. After all, you've received so much kindness from them, and you have to repay it. Even though I love you deeply, I must let go. After hearing Jocelyn's seemingly reasonable words, Hector looked at me with even more disgust. Then, without a low sigh, Hector's strict mother came panting, raised her hand as if she was going to hit him. You unfilial son. The Chloe family has been very kind to us. And Chloe even saved my life. But you call off the engagement. Our family will have no face to live here anymore. However, Hector's mother raised her hand again and again. But in the end, she couldn't bear to bring it down. She was waiting for me to rush forward and stop her as I used to do. Feeling sorry for Hector. Bullshit. Now I can't wait to give Hector to slaps myself. Since I have a chance to live this life again, I will never be Hector's virtuous wife and good mother. I want to be myself again. Fine, hadn't fulfilled my intention. I agreed to call off the engagement. To not only Hector, but everyone else was also stunned when they heard my words. The whole street knew that I had liked Hector since I was a child. How could I agree to call off the engagement so easily? Hector asked in disbelief. Chloe, are you really willing to call off the engagement with me? I sneered. Of course I'm not willing. As soon as Jocelyn heard this, she immediately turned around and pretended to shed tears, since Sister Chloe insists on holding on to you and doesn't want to be magnanimous. For your future, I'm willing to step back voluntarily. Brother Hector, let's still break up. Hector lovingly pulled her into his arms. He turned back and gave me a look as if to say, I knew it, and his expression immediately became impatient. But then I continued. So you have to pay back the money. Over the years, our family has spent a lot of money on your family, both inside and outside the house. This was all because of our upcoming marriage. Now that you want to call off the engagement, you should pay back this money. Right? Hector never expected that I would ask him for money. After all, according to my previous personality, I would have been eager to give him money. So, he subconsciously thought that this was a way for me to force him to submit, because I couldn't let go of him. Hector looked at me with great disgust and was about to agree. But he immediately realized that in 1997, he hadn't become a respected professor yet, and he didn't have any money in his pocket at all. I know you don't have the money. Just write an IOU. Here. The pen and paper are ready. Calculate the interest at per month. 10 yuan a month. And pay it off in 3 years. Pay on time. Hector's mother was used to taking advantage of our family. Suddenly, conveniently, seeing me become so cold and resolute, she hesitated and pulled at the corner of Hector's clothes, whispering to persuade him, son, paying out so much money at once. How are we going to live our lives? Listen to your mother. Say something nice to Chloe. Maybe we can just. In his previous life, Hector looked down on our family, which was engaged in what he considered speculative business. But our family had been kind to him, forcing the self-righteous him to bow his head. In this new life, he was holding a grudge in his heart. How could he possibly bow his head to me? Without saying a word, he picked up the pen and started writing the IOU. Mom, stop talking. I've already applied for that government-funded study abroad program in the county. I'm sure I'll be selected. When I return after completing my studies, I won't even care about this little money your family made through speculative business. Jocelyn beside him softly echoed, Brother Hector. Although your current situation isn't good, I don't mind. Even if Sister Chloe holds a grudge and doesn't want to give us money. With your own abilities, you will surely achieve great success in the future. These words moved Hector to tears. Then he proudly handed the IOU to me. Raising his chin, I'll pay it back. I'm also telling you that without you, Chloe, Hector, can still live a good life in this lifetime. I took the IOU. I didn't care about Hector's harsh words at all, and I had already made plans in my heart. I was quite interested in doing business back then. But Hector insisted that it was speculative business and would disgrace him. That's why I reluctantly returned to the family. Since I had a chance to live this life again and now the reform and opening up is in full swing, I should just go for it wholeheartedly. In this lifetime, I will only please myself. Moreover, without me running around for Hector back then, how did he think he got that study abroad quota? 3 Hector really couldn't wait. As soon as the engagement was called off, he couldn't wait to hold a wedding with Jocelyn. Compared to the poverty of my previous marriage, where I just used a piece of red cloth, now the Hector family put on a grand show. Hector borrowed money to buy a wedding dress for Jocelyn, and the 4 major betrothal gifts were all complete. The procession paraded around the county town merrily before arriving at the old house of the Hector family. Aunt Zhao in the neighborhood saw me looking stunned and immediately spat and said, "Ungrateful thing. Don't be fooled by his ostentatious appearance. He's in a huge debt. He's borrowed from everyone in the neighborhood who was willing to lend. He said he'd pay them back double when his study abroad bonus came. But that's still uncertain. And he's already making promises to others. Chloe, don't be sad. Aunt I will introduce a better man to you in the future." Sad? I didn't have time to be sad at all. The next 20 years would be a period of China's economic takeoff. I had to seize this opportunity and make a lot of money. By then, who cares about Hector Li? Hector Zhang? Hector Zhao? I can have whatever I want. Thinking of this, I quickly handed the goods in my hand forward. "Thank you, Aunt Zhao. Look, Auntie. These are called jeans. They're very popular in the South. Auntie, see if you like any of them. I'll give you a 20% discount. My clothing store will officially open tomorrow. You have to bring others to support me." When Aunt Zhao heard this, she smiled so widely that her eyes almost disappeared. But unexpectedly, when I was stocking up on goods in the evening, I actually saw Hector and Jocelyn coming. TSK. After all your hard work, you've only managed to rent such a small and old store. Well, Jocelyn, see if there are any of those pants you like for sale here. I rolled my eyes at Hector and said mercilessly, "Our store only accepts cash. We don't accept iOS." Hector's pride was hurt. And he immediately raised his voice and shouted, "Do you look down on me? Jocelyn, feel free to pick. I'll buy them for you. Pay in cash." I didn't even look up from the account book and mocked. Money borrowed is spent without a care. But if I remember correctly, Jocelyn, the registration fee for the dance school you applied to is due soon, right? Jocelyn's hand that had picked up the jeans immediately dropped, and she looked at Hector behind her tentatively. "Hector, the registration fee is 100 yuan. As for these pants, let's just..." Hector was still being stubborn and immediately took out the money and said, "Buy them. Buy them if you like them. Chloe, don't think that just because you have a little money, you can make us bow our heads. Jocelyn is different from you, who reeks of money." I wasn't angry at all. Instead, I smiled as I took the money, gave the change, packed the pants, and handed them over. After all, who would turn down money? No, Hector would. Before leaving, Hector knocked on my counter arrogantly, "Remember to attend a meeting in the county tomorrow. At that time, the notice of my government-funded study abroad will be announced at the meeting. And a large sum of subsidy will also be issued. I can pay off the money I owe you in one go. Open your eyes wide and see how well I'm doing without you. For yes, could you still become a professor without me?" But I didn't show it on my face. Just responded indifferently. The next day, Hector put on his most precious set of Zongshan suit, exuding high spirits all over. Even leaders from the provincial capital would come today. And he couldn't wait to show off. During this period, because of the broken engagement and borrowing money, many neighbors had been gossiping behind our backs. Hector had endured humiliation and was just waiting for today to finally feel vindicated. Hector's mother had even started spreading the word half a month ago that her son was going abroad. She had called people from half a street over, and had already put the wedding candies in her pocket, just waiting to distribute them. And neighbors around kept flattering him. "I've lived for so many years and have never even been to the provincial capital. Hector can go abroad at such a young age. He's really promising. Yes, I heard that after he comes back, he can go to the capital and be a teacher of teachers. Engaged in some scientific research. He'll even be commended on TV in the future. His life will be set. Hector, don't forget us when you become successful in the future. If we tell others, we neighbors will all benefit from it." One flattering word after another made Hector forget himself. When Hector saw me coming, he raised his chin even higher. "Next time you see me, you should call me Professor Hector. Look at yourself. A person engaged in speculative business selling goods. How can you be worthy of me?" I wasn't angry. Instead, I smiled and replied, "Hector, show some respect. There's no such thing as speculative business anymore. This is called doing business. Hector snorted. H. You're good at quibbling. I'm telling you. From now on, no one will say that I, Hector, am a heartless man. They will only say that you, Chloe, hadn't fulfilled my incession, are not worthy of me. The congratulatory speech at the meeting lasted for half an hour. And then came the exciting moment of announcement. The names of the applicants were announced one by one from the microphone, stating whether they were selected or not. Ji-zong. Not selected. Yu-zhen Hao. Not selected. Oliver. Selected. As soon as he heard this name, Hector smiled even more brightly. In his previous life, only he and this person named Oliver were successfully selected. It seemed that in this life, nothing had changed. Xian Tamyang. Not selected. Hector. The moment his name was called, all the eyes in the audience focused on Hector. He stood up proudly, adjusted his collar, and straightened his body. As long as he was selected, he would still be the respected Hector from his previous life. The gossiping of the neighbors, the money borrowed by his family, and even Jocelyn's registration fee. All the problems would be solved, and he would have the happiest and most successful life. Hector couldn't wait to take half a step forward and glanced at me contemptuously. But the next second, a voice came from the microphone, not selected. 5 Hector froze in place. And his voice involuntarily rose in disbelief. What? The host could only awkwardly repeat, Comrade Hector. Not selected. I'm sorry. Please take your seat. But Hector still didn't move at all. Finally, hadn't fulfilled my Psi. Hector's mother, who was embarrassed by his behavior, pulled Hector forcefully onto the chair. Hector almost collapsed onto the chair, his face extremely pale. He was trembling all over and kept muttering to himself. This is impossible. Impossible. As soon as this session ended, Hector almost staggered over. He grabbed Director Keon, who was in charge of the review, and started questioning him furiously. Why am I not on the list? Why am I not selected? I should be on it. Is it because you were jealous of me running for the standing committee with you in your previous life? So you're hurting me in this life? Hector pulled Director Keon's sleeve out of shape, and Director Keon was really annoyed by Hector's crazy words. But he still patiently explained to him. I don't know what you're talking nonsense about. Our review is based on grades. There is only one quota. And Comrade Oliver scored 1 point higher than you. So naturally he should be selected first. Comrade Hector. You are the second. And you are also very excellent. You should look at this matter with a calm mind. Hector went even crazier. 1? Isn't it 2? It was 2 in my previous life. How can I calm down? I was relying on this to turn my life around. You should check carefully. I can't be wrong. You must have made a mistake. Director Keon's good temper was worn out by him. Seeing that he was too excited and fearing that he would cause trouble, he could only ask the guards to carry him out to calm down. Hector was blocked at the entrance of the auditorium. His mother and the neighbors had already left feeling ashamed. He squatted alone in the corner, looking at the notice of the study, a broad list on display in front of him, laughing and crying. His precious Songshan suit was already wrinkled, and his hair was messy from the struggle. He didn't look like the self-proclaimed noble and refined intellectual at all. I watched coldly until he was too tired to go crazy. Then I stepped forward and asked inferiorly, Hector, do you know why you were selected in your previous life? Hector paused for a moment. Then he quickly stood up, opened his eyes wide and looked at me, full of shock. Previous life? Could it be that you also? I shook my head and smiled, and didn't answer this question. Instead, I continued, I begged for it for you. There was only 1 quota originally. In the previous life, I desperately begged Director Keon to give you a chance considering that you were the second place. And I even offered to pay for it myself. I can't remember how many people I begged and how many doors were slammed in my face before it was reluctantly agreed. Didn't you ever wonder why only your money was directly sent to your hands? Hector immediately retorted, impossible. You're talking nonsense. I was selected based on my outward abilities. It was clearly you meddling in my affairs in the previous life that made people say I got into the back door. I looked at Hector with a calm gaze. In the first month of your study abroad, the subsidy was 800 yuan, which was all my savings from those years. In the second month of your study abroad, it was 815 yuan. You didn't want me to do business, so that money was saved from helping others haul coal and picking up cardboard everywhere, and even saving from my own mouth. In the third month of your study abroad, 6 Hector shouted at me in disbelief, "Stop talking. I told you to stop talking. It doesn't make any sense." "Nonsense. Liar." But his shouting voice became more and more unconvincing, and the volume also decreased. Hector actually knew in his heart that during the period of his study abroad, he didn't even send me a single letter. How could I know so many details? The only possibility was that what I said was the truth, but he didn't want to believe it. "You've had a strong sense of self-esteem since you were a child, so I kept it from you to save your face, Hector. But what did I get in return? When you came back from studying abroad, you looked at me, your wife who had shared Weal and woe with you, with disdain. You disliked my smell of money and my lack of education. You wouldn't even let me take a step into your study. When I was on my deathbed, I tried so hard to stay alive. But you personally sent me to my death." My chest heaved violently. The grievances and bitterness of the previous life blocked my entire chest, and could only flow freely from the corners of my eyes. "So Hector, you brought all this on yourself. You deserve it." I turned around and left without looking at him again. I had only taken 2 steps when a conceited voice came from behind me. "Do you think you can force me to bow my head to you in this life? Don't be delusional. Even without you, even if I can't become a professor, I can still live a successful and happy life in this life. Jocelyn is beautiful and gentle. And she studied dancing and graduated from high school. She's thousands of times better than you. Just wait and see. In this life, you're still not worthy of me." "Fine, hadn't settled my ansai. I'll wait." "Chloe, I work in the Women's Federation and know a young man who works in the government's publicity department. He's a bright and honest. Take a look. If you're free on the weekend, go and meet him." I shook my head and smiled, then stuffed a pair of socks into Aunt Xiao's plastic bag. My Ardevouisville store just opened. I really don't have the mood to talk about these things now. Still, thank you for caring about me and taking care of my business so much. These are newly arrived socks from Guangzhou. I'll give you a pair. Please help me see if they're comfortable." Aunt Xiao pretended to be angry and poked my forehead. "You. But it's also a good thing. Fortunately, having fulfilled me, you didn't marry that Hector. Otherwise, your life wouldn't be as prosperous as it is now. You don't know yet. Do you? He's just a down and out now." Aunt Xiao leaned forward and started gossiping in a low voice. "TSK. He called so many people to watch him. But he wasn't selected. Isn't that embarrassing? Moreover, he borrowed a lot of money in the name of going abroad. Now, although he's been assigned to be a primary school teacher and has a monthly salary of 50 yuan, but the 4 debts he borrowed, it's hard to say when he'll be able to pay them off. Someone kindly introduced a job to him, but he didn't appreciate it and even said that the person was insulting him. He really has his eyes set high. His family is almost out of food, but he still looks down on everyone. It seems that you really shouldn't gossip about others behind their backs." Just as Aunt Xiao was talking, Hector walked into the store with his head down. Without saying a word, he came up and knocked on my counter, ordering, "Chloe, come out for a moment." Who does he think he is? Just because he asks me to come out doesn't mean I will. He's really used to treating me like a free nanny in the previous life. I looked at him coldly and didn't even give him a glance. "I'm busy with the store business and can't leave. If you have anything to say, just say it here." Hector didn't expect me to refuse him so unceremoniously. He was momentarily stunned and couldn't say a word. He could only awkwardly take out a plastic bag from his briefcase. And conspicuously inside was the pair of jeans he had bought for Jocelyn last time. "Return this for me." 7. I looked up and glanced at it. "Can't return it. The tag of this pair of jeans has been cut off, and it has been worn and washed." Hector refused to accept it. "Why not? These pants have clearly not been worn many times. Why won't you give me a refund?" "Chloe, heading so land sai. don't turn your love into hatred. Just because you can't have me. You're starting to target me. Before I could retort, Aunt Xiao, who was righteous and courageous, stepped in front of the counter and pointed at Hector and started scolding. Hector, do you have any shame left? There's no reason to ask for a refund for clothes that have been worn. Do you just think Chloe is easy to bully and are trying to get money from her in a roundabout way? Turning love into hatred? I spit on that. Where do you get the nerve to say that? Chloe has now opened 2 stores and will soon be a 10,000 yuan household. I don't know how many people are vying to date her. Fortunately, you were blind enough to call off the engagement yourself. Otherwise, I don't know how much Chloe would have been dragged down by you. As soon as Aunt Xiao spoke up, the gossip from the neighbors around made Hector unable to lift his head at all. His face turned red with embarrassment, and he forcefully dragged me outside. It was only when we reached the corner of the alley that he said, Chloe, if you won't give a refund, then help Jocelyn pay the registration fee. I sneered, why should I? Am I her mother? Hector actually put on a stern face and started lecturing me. But you kept giving her money in your previous life. Didn't you? Moreover, in the previous life, she sprained her ankle because of you and couldn't enter the dance academy. Chloe, cutting fulfilled my sigh. This is your atonement. I didn't hide my disdain and rolled my eyes at Hector. First of all, in the previous life, it was you who used the family's money to support her. Whenever I said no, you would give me a cold shoulder. I had no choice but to agree for the sake of the family and the children. And our family was constantly being bled dry by her. Secondly, she didn't sprain her ankle because of me at all. She fell on her own. The hospital said that there was nothing wrong with her foot at all. Besides, with her bottom-ranked dancing skills, only someone as blinded by love as you would believe that she could be admitted. Hector instinctively began to defend Jocelyn. Don't try to exonerate yourself by slandering Jocelyn. She has always been a standout in the dance class and clearly could have been admitted. Jocelyn is different from someone like you who only cares about money. She is noble and elegant, educated and cultured. And she is the one who truly understands me. If it weren't for you, I would have been with Jocelyn a long time ago in my previous life. Fortunately, in the end, she divorced for me. I was really annoyed by his stupidity and directly interrupted Hector. Divorce your head. It was because Jocelyn met a wealthy foreign businessman and went abroad as his mistress. She wasn't even married. Later, when she got older and no one wanted her abroad, she saw that you were doing well in China now. So she suddenly came back to you. Do you really believe that nonsense about, I chose to let go and go abroad for your happiness? You're really incredibly stupid. Seeing Hector looking angry, I really didn't want to waste any more words with him. Fine. Fine. I won't say any more. In this life, I didn't cause her to sprain her ankle. Let Jocelyn take the exam once and privately ask about the results later. Also, since you think your Jocelyn is noble, then let's see if she still loves you deeply after you have no money or reputation in this life. Hector stuffed the jeans into his briefcase and said to me viciously, nonsense. Jocelyn is not the kind of person you described at all. I will prove it to you. 8 later. I don't know where Hector borrowed the money from. But anyway, Jocelyn went to take the exam. On the day the results were announced, I was stocking up on goods in the clothing city. Now I had also rented a store with 2 floors. My business was getting bigger and bigger, and I was getting busier and busier. Aunt Zhao's little grandson suddenly rushed in to find me and said in a hurry, Sister Chloe, go and help my mom quickly. There's a quarrel between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law over there, and my mom can't stop them alone. She was almost hurt herself. Aunt Zhao worked in the Women's Federation and usually dealt with mediating conflicts between women. When emotions flared up, it was possible for people to get into fights and draw blood. Without saying a word, I followed the little grandson and rushed outside. When I got there, I found that the people quarreling were actually acquaintances. Hector's mother and Jocelyn. Hector's mother was held back by Aunt Xiao, but she was still struggling and pointing at Jocelyn and scolding, little vixen. You spend money on buying clothes every day, and you've almost ruined our family. You even put on so much makeup. I don't know who you're dressing up for. You don't turn a penny and don't do any housework either. You act like a master at home. Why did Hector marry you? A scourge. Home. Jocelyn's emotions also flared up, and she stuck her head out and retorted. It's your son who is willing. Besides, I'm a dancer. How can the hands of a dancer wash clothes and cook? Hector's mother became even angrier and reached out to pull Jocelyn's hair. He even mortgaged the house, saying he was going to pay your registration fee. Now you say you didn't pass the exam. Are you worthy of my son? Are you worthy of our family? If I hadn't caught you washing clothes by the river today, and found you kissing that foreigner hiding in the grove, I don't know how long my son would have had to wear that green hat. Jocelyn let out a scream of pain and immediately started scratching Hector's mother's face with her nails to fight back. The two of them were in a chaotic fight. Inseparable. Stop. Stop it all. Hector came back. With the police's intervention, the few of them managed to calm down and talk. Hector looked at the crowd of onlookers surrounding them in 3 layers, feeling ashamed and angry. What are you two doing? Do you have to embarrass me completely? How can I hold my head up in the future? Hector's mother hugged Hector and started crying and accusing. My son. You're finally here. After I caught this little slut cheating on you outside. She started packing her things to leave. We owed a huge debt when we married her into our family. Now that she's found a rich man, she wants to leave. There's no justice in this world. Hector obviously didn't respond. Instead, he asked Jocelyn with a cold face, Jocelyn, you told me you didn't perform well. But I went to your school and asked. Your teacher said you didn't come to class frequently. Your grades were always at the bottom. And you were very close to a foreigner. The one who always gets the first place in grades is your classmate. Jocelyn. You've been lying to me. Haven't you? Jocelyn was somewhat angry and ashamed. How dare you investigate me? I'm asking you. Is it true? Facing Hector's questioning, Jocelyn had a kind of resignation as if she didn't care anymore. Yes. Since you found out. I won't pretend everything is okay anymore. What your mother said is true. And what you said is also true. But it's not my fault at all. You said you could become a professor, go abroad to study and get a lot of subsidies, and become successful in the future. That's why I followed you. Jocelyn looked at Hector contemptuously and said, but look at the life I've been living since we got married. The betrothal gifts were grand, but they were all borrowed. Every month when it's time to get paid, the debt collectors at home almost want to take away the pot. We don't even put lard in our meals, let alone any meat. You even wanted to return the only new piece of clothing I had, for a loser like you. Besides being stubbornly noble and having some so-called backbone, what else do you have? You have high ambitions but low abilities and won't lower your status to earn money. I regret marrying you so much that my intestines are turning green. 9 Jocelyn's words shocked Hector, and he could hardly believe it. He almost looked at her with a pleading gaze. Didn't I treat you well? I borrowed money to pay for your tuition and living expenses. Jocelyn. Although our life is difficult now. When you married me, you said you didn't care about my family situation or whether I had money. You said we would work hard together and make our lives better. Jocelyn let out a cold snort. You actually believe that nonsense? Without money, what can you give me for a good life? I'm telling you. I'm going abroad with my man in a few days. He's a wealthy man and has a factory in the United States. Let's get divorced quickly. I don't want to have anything to do with you. A loser. Anymore. Jocelyn didn't explain anymore. She pushed Hector away and walked outside. Slut. You put a green hat on my son and made our family bear so much debt. And yet you just. Hector's mother pointed at Jocelyn's back and started scolding. As she spoke, her blood boiled and she started gasping for breath. She was having an asthma attack. Chloe. Thank you. If it weren't for you, my mother might have. I immediately raised my hand and interrupted Hector's words. I would have saved anyone in that situation today. Take good care of your mother. I still have something to do in my store. So I'll be leaving now. Hector's mother immediately grabbed my hand and said, Chloe. It's all that slut Jocelyn's fault. If it weren't for her seducing Hector, your marriage would have gone through. They say that true feelings are revealed in times of adversity. You're a sincere person. I heard that you're not dating anyone yet. Is it that? All right. I'll make the decision. Hector. Quickly divorce that little slut and marry Chloe. I've long heard that Chloe's store is doing well. Another day. This old woman, will also go and help out at the counter. Her calculating intentions were almost hitting me in the face. My originally somewhat gentle expression immediately darkened. Any pity I had for this old woman and disappeared completely. Why on earth did I show mercy and save her? I pulled my hand away from Hector's mother and said coldly, "It's impossible. I'm not married because I don't want to be married. And it has nothing to do with Hector. As for me and him, I will never marry him in this life. Give up on that idea." I smiled, deliberately trying to disgust Hector's mother and Hector, because Chloe, cutting fulfilled my sigh, will not marry a divorced man. Looking at Hector with an ashen-faced expression and his mother who was so ashamed that she couldn't speak, I felt extremely satisfied. I slightly raised my chin, sneered, and turned to leave. But it seemed that my refusal didn't make Hector give up. The next day, having fulfilled my obsession, he showed up at the entrance of my Odibriswell store carrying a pot of chicken soup. "I saw that you weren't at the clothing store, so I guessed you were here. I cooked this chicken soup myself. My mother thought it tasted good, so I brought some for you to try. I didn't reach out to take it, no need. You can drink it yourself. Chloe, don't resist me. Just think of it as me repaying your kindness. And also as making amends for the wrong things I did in this life and the previous life." I gave him a cold look. Repay your kindness? I wouldn't dare to say that. After you achieved success and fame, you sneered at me countless times. If it weren't for repaying the kindness back then, how could I have married a woman like you? All you know is engaging in speculative business. You should read some books instead. If you really know you were wrong, then get lost quickly. The farther the better. I don't want to have any more connections with you. Don't let the stench of money on me stain a noble scholar like you. Hector was so ashamed by my words that he couldn't lift his head, and his face turned bright red. I don't know how long he stood there in silence. When I looked up again, he had already walked far away. "Zhao Zhu. If he comes again next time, don't let him in." 10. During this period, Hector frequently came to my store to make his presence felt. Fortunately, having fulfilled my incession, I had already given instructions to the employees to firmly block him outside the door. It was not until a week later that he blocked me at the back door of the warehouse. As soon as we met, Hector couldn't wait to say, "Chloe, I'm sorry. I know I should have said this apology to you a long time ago. I have a strong sense of self-esteem. You've seen so many of my embarrassed and ugly moments. So I always subconsciously belittled you. Just like belittling my unbearable past. Now I realize how wrong I was. Chloe, you're the one who truly treated me well. In those years, you took care of the family affairs for me and gave birth to our children. I understood it too late. In this life, I will definitely treat you like a precious pearl and be good to you. Please believe me." This apology truly felt like it came from another world. Did it make me feel relieved? I just felt regretful. Why did I fall in love with such a person in my previous life and waste my whole life in vain? Looking at Hector's still handsome face, all that rose in my heart was calmness. "I heard you, but I don't accept it. I can't forgive you on behalf of myself in the previous life. In this life, I have money, good looks, and a lot of youth. But what about in the previous life? I was confined to my sickbed for a long time. And you didn't even take a look at me. There were 50 years of cold violence, contempt, and even infidelity in our marriage in my later years." I took a deep breath and said slowly, "It's not that you have a strong sense of self-esteem. You're actually inferior and a coward. You could only gain a sense of superiority by constantly suppressing me. You used to often say that without you, I couldn't live such a good life now. But without me, you, Hector, are nothing but a piece of shit." I took out an invitation from my pocket and stuffed it into Hector's hand, using the words he had said to me before to retort, "My grand restaurant will open tomorrow. Remember to come and support me. Open your eyes wide and see how well I'm doing without you." Hector didn't come. Maybe he was hiding in the crowd and watching from the side, but it didn't matter to me at all. I was extremely busy with the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Receiving guests, and handling payments. With the memories of my previous life, I was skilled at using modern marketing techniques such as reduce the meal fee by 10 yuan for every additional customer, free fruits for the first 3 days of opening, and 10 discount for dining outside the peak hours. It was not until late at night, when I was calculating the accounts, that I occasionally heard Xiaoshu chatting with me. Chloe, do you know that teacher Hector lost his job? My hand counting the money paused. How could he lose his job? Xiaoshu nodded and continued. It's about the house. Didn't he mortgage the house to pay Jocelyn's registration fee back then? As a result, he couldn't pay the money back. The mortgage company wasn't reliable either. The interest kept rolling. And it became even more terrifying. Not only did he lose the house, but he still couldn't pay off the debt. The most terrifying thing was that the debt collectors even went to the school. Although this was illegal, the children were all scared. And the parents kept complaining one after another. So he lost his job. Now in our area, people treat his family like the plague. Those who lent him money before are scolding him behind his back and urging him to pay back the money every day. All the 4 major items his family bought were taken away to pay off the debt. I heard that his mother didn't have the money to treat her as my attack. I tied the money into a bundle with a rubber band and just replied, "Is that so? I won't show mercy this time." When he pulled out my oxygen tube and sent me to my death in the previous life, I wonder if he ever thought of this day. Let go of the urge to help others and respect everyone's own destiny. In this life, he, Hector, sowed the evil seeds. So he has to bear the bitter fruit himself. Xiaozhu, you'll be the acting store manager of the restaurant from now on. After all, the market in the county town is limited. During this period, I'm going to visit the provincial capital. 11. The provincial capital is indeed much more advanced. And the economy is developing rapidly now. The clothing and automobile stores I opened in the county may not be as popular here. But after all, it's the 1990s. Roller skating rinks, karaoke bars, internet cafes, mobile phone stores, computer cities, entertainment cities, and various milk tea shops are the things that are sought after in this era. Starting from these aspects, I soon achieved results. Step by step, from Sister Zhu, Boss Zhu, General Manager Zhu to the current entrepreneur Zhu. As for Hector, after I went to the provincial capital, I rarely heard any news about him. Only when my parents went back to visit relatives, did they occasionally mention a few words. They said that he was now doing the job he used to look down on the most, selling toys. They also said that his mother had passed away due to a serious illness. He was chased around by the debt collectors and accidentally had his leg broken by a car. But most of the time, they talked about how successful I was. On TV and in the newspapers. It was said that a great entrepreneur had emerged from a small county town. The neighbors said they were proud to know me. Thanks to my funding, the county's asphalt road was the first to be built. I didn't make any comments. I just smiled and put on the newly bought clothes and jewelry for my parents. In my previous life, I was a housewife, relying on Hector and having no money to buy nice things for my parents, let alone take care of them. Now, with money and without having to please others, I can't wait to buy all the good things for my parents. Okay, Chloe. This jewelry is so heavy that I can hardly wear it. Old woman, just wear it. It's all your daughter's thoughtfulness. Now when we go back, everyone will say how successful our Chloe is. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years have passed. Maybe I've been too happy in this life, and I've almost forgotten the things of my previous life. It was today when I took my daughter back to the county town to visit my parents that I saw a lame man pushing a stove and selling baked sweet potatoes. He looked very familiar. Mom. When I was at college, there wasn't even baked sweet potatoes for sale in the cafeteria. I'm so craving for them. I smiled and parked the car. Then took my daughter to choose some. The man selling sweet potatoes had gray hair and looked old, with rough palms. His cheap cotton hat was already a bit unraveled. He was hunched over, stuffing baked sweet potatoes into the stove, and looked rather gloomy. It was Hector. When our eyes met, he looked extremely embarrassed and reached out to adjust his hat awkwardly. Chloe, Chloe. Long time no see. I nodded as a response. When we were about to leave, Hector refused to take the money, saying that it was for the child to eat. While we were arguing, I heard someone calling me from behind. It was my husband, Oliver. He was holding a large bouquet of flowers, opened the car door, and ran towards me with a smile. There was a symposium abroad, and I was really delayed. As soon as I got off the plane, I took a car and rushed here. I hope our beautiful Miss Sue won't be angry. Happy wedding anniversary. I shook my head and accepted the flowers. You don't have to be in such a hurry. It's just an ordinary day. Look at you. You have dark circles under your eyes. My daughter chimed in on the side. Oliver, what are you doing? You two are already an old couple, but you're being so mushy. Oliver smiled and pretended to be angry. Hey, hey. Your mother is always a little girl in my eyes. Oliver took out the money from his wallet and stuffed it into Hector's hand, smiling happily and brightly. 15 yuan for 4. I only have a 20 yuan bill and no change. I'll give you the rest. Today is my wedding anniversary with my wife. Let's all be happy. The pedestrians passing by couldn't help but whisper that this was the dream love. The young couple has grown old together, still loving and trusting each other. Hearing this, the corners of Hector's eyes turned red. Our family of 3 turned around and walked away. Chloe, I'll hold the flowers for you first. Come on. Let's go to the supermarket as a family. My cooked chicken wings. Your mother couldn't stop praising them when she ate them. Oliver, don't talk nonsense. I was just surprised at that time how someone who usually holds a pen could also hold a spatula. So what? I can not only hold a spatula, but also a broom, a mop. I was amused by Oliver's childlike words. My eyes fell on the bouquet of flowers in his arms, which were bright and fresh. In this life, he holds every petal carefully in his arms and takes good care of them.